Hello! Today we're going to draw a turtle. This is the second version of the turtle. So we'll start with drawing the outline of the shell. I found with drawing the turtle before, it was that proportion to the shell to the head that seemed to make a difference of how the turtle looked in the end with the overall image. So I drew the shape of the turtle shell first. And now out of the turtle shell, we're going to draw the head. I had turtles as a kid, so I know exactly what their head looks like in their shell and the proportions. So if it's off a little bit, I noticed in the last turtle that it kind of bugged me. The head it just wasn't quite right. On the top of their head, they kind of have this little bump. They have a weird shaped head, and their head face goes directly into their neck, like a little snake in a way. So I'm just lightly sketching out the entire image first. Using just a regular HB pencil, a pretty light lead. In the neck part here, it's a little darker right underneath the shell because there's like almost like a little hole, a little cavern. Just trying to sketch the underbelly of the shell. It's kind of a strange angle. That's just the under of the shell. You just see a little bit of it peeking out. And this really creates the 3D form. And here it's quite dark and shaded. No light can really get into this area. You can't even see his back leg. That's how they sit. They sit on their shell and you can barely, looks like they don't have any back legs at certain angles. But we do see his front leg. We have to get the length right. The last image, I don't think the legs were the right proportion to the body. They were too long. And just peeking out from under his shell, his front leg. And they have about 5 toes, I believe. 5 toes. And they have these little tiny claws. But we can only see 3 of the toes here. I'm not sure if they have 5. I'll have to double check. I can't remember. And we're just going to get the underside here. It's quite dark. So I'm quickly shading in the dark areas just because I know it's going to be dark. And this is just the edge of his underbelly part of a shell. And they're kind of sectioned off like that. And this is his other front leg, his front foot. They do have these little claws. They kind of curve their feet in a little bit. Like his foot is a little bit turned in. And I'm just going to shade underneath the foot just to ground the foot onto the earth. And we know this is going to be dark right under his underbelly. It's shaded from the actual turtle. So we'll just shade that in right away. So I'm really just kind of getting the dark areas in and the overall image and the lines just to get a good solid sketch first. It's quite dark underneath. And there's a little bit of a pattern on the inside of a shell or his underside of a shell. So I'll just sketch that in. It's a bit darker. There's almost like these dark forms. Not actual forms, but dark shapes. I'm just going to start sketching in the pattern of a shell. And the pattern in the shell is like regular but irregular. It is a pattern, but it's not perfect. So you can kind of play around with it. They're not fully symmetrical, the shape. It's very organic. But it does have like rows that go in a circular format around a shell. And they get smaller and smaller as the shell gets narrowed to the top. So just sketch it out. I'm pretty happy with this. We can go back in and create more form and shade and the use of line to create more texture in the shell. And as we get farther away from the underside of a shell, it's going to get lighter in shading. And that really creates that three-dimensional form. And it also creates that illusion of his head kind of peeking out. We'll draw on the eye. Their eye is just like a circle, and it's kind of connected. The pupil is kind of connected with a line to either side of the round circle. And they have a little bit of eyelid, a little bit of an under eye. Just kind of sketching all the more defined lines first. And his mouth is kind of just like a straight line for his mouth down. That's kind of parallel to his nose. And this is a red slider. So if this was colored, the longest, biggest shape that's just below his eye would be red. But this is a black and white drawing, so we don't see that, but this is a red slider turtle. And we're just going to create, their skin has these patterns. It almost looks like kind of like water. It's a really artistic version of water. Almost like a line painting of water, I imagine. That's what their skin kind of looks like. Or paint by number type of form. So we're just going to create lines on his feet, on his head. I'm just going to shade this in some areas to create almost like stripes. So you can decide how the stripe's going to look. This is going to vary from picture to picture. I'm just kind of filling in some of these rows to create the idea of like stripes and patterns on his skin. And I'll leave the, right now I'm going around where it would be red usually, that one shape. Just shade it in. And I'm still just using a regular HB pencil. It's a little darker underneath here. I'm pretty happy with the shape. Now it's just going around and darkening up areas and have more definition in some areas. Playing around with the pattern, darkening up under here, adding a little more pattern underneath the shell. And just kind of shading that next, it is darker, even though there's a pattern, but it is still darker. This is going to be the darkest area of the image. This is quite shadowed right underneath the shell. It's going to really help pop out the shell. And the darkest will be right below the bottom of the shell and the earth. Because he's kind of like, he has a shell, the bottom of his shell is down on the ground. You can't even see his back leg. You kind of get a little more looser with the lines at the bottom onto the earth to create the idea of the earth. Let's just ground his foot a little bit underneath here. And I'm just kind of squiggling, keeping parallel lines. little squiggles. Going back in with my shader, just blending in this darker area. I'm using my smallest shader. You could use a bigger shader if you had one. It's not really that much detail, but I just grabbed this one. Just smooth this in, blend it in. And I don't even touch the places that I want to keep light. If I don't want it to blend in, I just don't touch it. And I just leave it. And I can go back in with my eraser now, and I'm just lighting up areas that I overblended that I want to highlight. You can get really fine, almost like a pencil eraser, and then you can get more detailed with that eraser with a tighter edge, like more exact, like more precise. Now I'm just going back in with my 3B pencil, so it's a darker, softer lead. And I find I gravitate towards the 3B. I like this lead for going back in and darkening up areas. It's just a little bit darker and a little bit softer. I just find it's like I really like working with the 3B. And now I'm just going back in again and just tightening up the edges, shading in some of the edges that could be darker, defining those little stripes, creating that pattern. I'm just really smoothing the edges, just going back around. I really like moving around my image and then going back to where I worked before and then going around the image again and coming back. I find it creates a more balanced look to the image. And I'm just going around, and I always go around too, and I'll kind of erase my lines in the negative space as I go. I'll just take my eraser. Let's work on the shell a little bit. Now this is my 4B, so it's a little bit darker. Softer lead still. You can see how it's a little darker than the 3B. And it's a nice sharp pencil, and I just want to really define these lines with some detail. Some really fine lines to create that pattern, the stripes, the texture. Just darken it up down here. This is the darkest area, remember? Seems like you darken up one area, you feel like you have to darken up the darkest area to balance it out. And this would be red. So I just kind of want to emphasize that piece. Just create nice detail. Just layering the lines, layering on the image. The little nostrils, their little nose is right on top there. Now with the shell, I'm just going to kind of blend in. Because if you look at a turtle shell, it doesn't really have like defined lines. It's just, it is, but it isn't. There is some line on the shell, but it's really more a shape of the shell. They have almost like these different, they're like kind of like, the shell's kind of bumpy and smooth with this idea of lines because each little scale almost. So I'm just going to smooth this in to create the look of the actual turtle shell. There's almost like a smooth, bumpy pattern. And what I'm doing is I'm just blending in those lines. So they're not as defined, just like that. Sometimes less is more. Just smoothing out my negative space or erasing any lines or smudges, cleaning up the negative space, not smoothing it out. I'm just going to take a darker pencil, a 6B, and really darken up these dark areas. Because as I said before, as we darken up some areas, we feel like we have to darken up the darkest areas to keep that ratio of dark to light. I'm just going to add a little more definition, some of these cracks that are more defined, just to pop out that shell. Really darkening up this area. Just the finishing touches now. I'm pretty happy with that. Thanks for watching.